one works, maybe I have to use the other one. My microphone.
No,
But this is correct.
I think you turn on your mic here.
Okay. Now it's okay.
Is okay now.
Yeah.
I don't know what to change.
No problem.
Please switch on the mic.
Okay, so I can continue. And the last point is the enhances the collaboration with the local and regional industries and communities for the application of artificial intelligence robotics technologies in solving problems of industry and community. Okay, today's programs is organized in this way. We'll have a presentation by Robert Alexander now. Then on the application of artificial intelligence robotics in, in a biomedical field. Then we have the presentation of some companies, Tizio, Accenture, Algovat, BIS, SIM for Future, and Vega Research Laboratories. So the first speaker is Robert Alexander, that is Connect. So thank you, Robert. Please start.
Thank you, everyone. Francesco, thank you very much for having me here. It will be a pleasure to share some experience I've gathered in the past, well, 25 years. And let me share the presentation. So, okay, PowerPoint. Can you confirm you're seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So it will be a slightly unconventional presentation because I'm a medical doctor, but I started, well, I graduated with a master's thesis on artificial intelligence in 1985. And so I've been working with artificial intelligence in the medical domain for many, many years. Not only in the research setting, but in the last 20 years almost in a commercial setting in IBM, you know, the large multinational company. So what I will speak about is real life experience of applying research.
Excuse me, are you sharing your slides?
Yes, I am. It's not working.
We see black screen.
Let me try again. Well, I'm actually, well, let me stop and start again. What about it now? Because it's actually sharing.
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay, thank you very much. So it will be rather, you know, let's say I want to share the experience with you and see where artificial intelligence applied to the biomedical domain is heading. So to do this, my experience tells me that when you have to apply technology to make a process or an industrial sector better, you must start from requirements, not from the technology. So what we see as of today is a lot of research and also a lot of commercial companies having a wonderful AI idea, but actually not understanding very well what is actually needed by the people that should be using them. And this is, I think, the #1 failure element in many projects I've seen failing. And you must learn from failures as much as from success, right? So I will touch requirements. And to do that, I will do a section on, you know, how caretakers, when I say doctors, please always understand that I'm talking also about nurses and psychologists. So everybody who is taking care of health, caregivers, formal caregivers, not only doctors, of course, biologists, geneticists, and so on. So how do they reason? What do they need from their special technology called AI? Because AI is special in the sense that it's an attempt to automate intelligent processes, right? So let's spend just a little time understanding, you know, what is the intelligence of people caring for health. Then for those of you who are not doctors or, you know, similar figures, I would like to let you understand what is the domain. So how is medicine evolving? You know, what is the state of the art? and how it is going. And then, of course, there is a small part at the end talking about technology. So without further ado, let's talk about the mind. So the first component. The first thing I wish to communicate is that doctors are a special kind of worker, right? In the literature, they might be described as knowledge workers, like lawyers, like writers, like a lot of other domains in which the information you must manage to actually work properly is very, very, very complex. It's very hard to define standard processes that can be followed and standard data that is sufficient to address that process. You can do that for financial things, for banking, for telcos, for other domains which have less complex and more standardized data behind them. But a medical doctor is confronted, and we will see this, I think, very well, with such a complex domain, plus with such an evolution of the domain. Just think, 10 years ago, drugs, vaccines, and diagnostic techniques and sensors were very different from what they are today. So it's this is a very important characteristic to take always with you in mind when you think about the work of clinical people. But even before that, we must give a little attention on what is important, because I've seen countless projects fail because they were giving solutions to non-problems and vice versa. So let's talk a little bit very quickly, of course, about scientific psychology, experimental psychology. So how is the cognition of a clinical person confronting a patient going to work? And as you know, cognition can be described in many different skills. Some of them are listed there, and we will see some of those. Please keep in mind that our intelligence, our cognition, is something that has evolved under the pressure of evolution in the last 300,000 years. So our intelligence is very, very similar to that was, present 10,000 or 15,000 years ago, even before that, when we were hunter-gatherers, and it has not changed significantly enough. What has changed a lot is the world in which we operate. So perception. We all give for granted that our perception is perfect, but this is not the case. There are countless examples of that. The first one you see on the top is called saccadic suppression. You are not aware of this, but almost 30% of the time during the day, you are blind. And this is for a very good reason. Our eyes constantly change direction of sight, especially if we are walking or going in a car. Our eyes do constantly small, adjustments of the direction called saccades. And luckily, our brain just filters out the moments in which our eyes move, or else we will be nauseated, right? So actually, you don't realize that, but you are technically blind 30% of the time in which you're awake. And this is just one example. A second example is in the middle, Adelson's board. Please look at the squares labeled as A and B and tell me if you think they are the same shade of gray. Now, unless you are very special, I think that you will conclude that the A square is darker than the B square. Actually, if you put a piece of paper with just two holes on top of this checkerboard, you will see that A and B are exactly the same color. But again, if you're not very special, like my 9-year-old child, you will think that A is darker than B. That's another illusion. The last one, Caniza's triangle, you are seeing something that does not exist. I mean, the white triangle in the bottom simply does not exist. It's our brain using, to interpret reality, building the idea that there is something that actually does not exist in the physics of the image. And this is just perception. So also doctors, when they look at a patient, they look at the radiography, they look at an exam, don't give for granted that, their perception is perfect. The second point is attention. There is a very, very interesting experiment that has been done. In the image on the left, you are seeing a slice of a chest TC scan. I don't know if you are capable of seeing that, but there is a gorilla overlaid here where the mouse is moving. I hope you can see it. It's a fairly large gorilla, which has been, of course, artificially superimposed to the CT scan. It's much larger than the nodule that was the task given to people looking at this TC scan. On the right, you are seeing the eye tracking. So all people looking at these slides were measured, the gaze was measured, and you can see where the eye of the radiographer or the sample person was looking. And you can see here that the eye actually went on the gorilla. Now, what is very, very interesting, and it's called inattentional blindness, is that only 15% of the radiologists interviewed after seeing these images actually had the perception of seeing the gorilla. 85% did not. Of course, naive observer rate was even higher. So it's very interesting seeing, how is it possible that you didn't see this gorilla? Well, this is a problem related to attention. Another very interesting thing is memory. We think we have good memory. Again, there are countless and countless experiments and papers certifying that our memories are very fickle. They can be even substituted. This is well known in the legal field, for example, because it's very well known that you can introduce false memories in people you are interrogating, for example, if you don't, speak in the right way. And there is a very interesting theory called the fuzzy trace theory that says that when you have to memorize a complex instruction, for example, and we will see that a guideline, medical guidelines would teach even an expert doctor, you should do this, this, and this, and that. And sometimes these guidelines are hundreds of papers. And again, there is ample literature stating that the memory of people reading this and understanding this is not verbatim, it's not photographic. I mean, we understand and we are attentive and we remember things in a very strange way. And the last one is decision. I think that many of you might be aware of the work of the Nobel Prize Kahneman, who is very popular, that has a model saying that the way we take decisions is divided in two different systems, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the one we are actually using most of the time. It's based on experience, intuition, heuristics, very, very quick. Of course, it can fail. Type 2 is the slow, deliberate, analytic, systematic way of thinking, which is activated only in certain circumstances. And again, this is an underlying difference between an expert doctor and a non-expert doctor. And the reason is that if you are cognizant of these differences, you make less errors, okay? And the last thing I want to talk about is biases. I don't know if most of you are aware of this. Of course, this happens to every human being, doctor, and everybody. We have a number of biases that frame our attention, cognition, memory, decision, and knowing them is very important to be, a better doctor and even maybe a better person, a better friend, and so on. Okay, so this is to say that what people especially coming from the technology part of view, they have a cybernetic model of, the mind, which is false. We don't have an input, we don't have an output, we don't have a memory and a processing unit. That's a model, a cybernetic model, which is very poorly describing what is actually happening in a human mind. The second part of the slides I'm showing you is talking about medicine. Medicine has evolved immensely through the centuries. And just, very, very quickly, where are we as of today? Well, one phenomena which is very interesting is the abundance of data we have today. This abundance of data comes from the engineering and technology part of it. Finally, I'm speaking well of it, with a very, large richness of sensors, Internet of Things, and stuff like that, and diagnostic methodologies, and genomics, and so on and so forth. So we have a wealth and a diversity of data, and the opportunity of capturing data in real time, which is extremely interesting, because we know that when we measure parameters in the hospital setting, they are probably very strongly influenced by the setting. If we can monitor, especially chronic conditions, in the natural lifetime of people, this is leading to better quality data. But what is very important to understand is that a biological system such as the human body and its health is an extremely complex in the mathematical sense. So it's complex, meaning that there are emergent properties that cannot be easily computed relying on first principles, okay? And this complexity is multi-layered. It is starting from the genetic part, in which today we know that the genetic expression is not as simple as we thought 15, 20 years ago. DNA is transcribed in RNA, and RNA is translated into proteins. Yes, that is true most of the times, but the picture is extremely more complex. And therefore, today we know that we have, reverse transcriptase, we have interaction pathways, and so on and so forth. So the picture has grown incredibly more complex than before. And that is only genetics. Then genetics is translated into proteins, and proteins are, involved in all the metabolic processes that make us, healthy or sick. And remember that we have 37 raised to 10 per 12. So it's what, 1,000 billion of billions of cells. In each of them, you have metabolic pathways, which are extremely complicated. Here you have a very simple depiction of a schematic of the main metabolic pathways that happen in a cell. And again, the cellular level is not enough to explain healthcare, because cells are organized into tissues, tissues are organized into organs, organs are organized into people, and finally, going out of the boundary of a human body, people live in an environment, depending on what they eat, the quality of air, the quality of water, economics, education, social context, and so on. The determinants of healthcare go up to, all of these factors, which are even external and relational to the body. So you understand that the idea of computing by first principles the healthcare of people is actually probably an illusion. This doesn't mean that all of this progress is useful. It's extremely useful. And in these years, in the last decade and in the future, we are starting to change the way we cure people from a model that was based on large-scale statistical analysis of the benefits of something we do, to a more personalized approach, which takes into account, again, the genetic makeup, the environment, and so on. And this is leading to personalized therapies that are more effective or have less adverse effects than before. One thing which is very important and is not present in this slide is, for example, gender medicine. Most of the medical trials are done on a male population, and very often the conclusions you reach about the efficacy and safety of a cure done on a male population does not fully translate for women. So, for example, pain control is very different in men and women, and gender medicine is an example of this more personalized way of curing people. Hopefully I haven't bored you with this, but I think it's very important to understand this, because I guess that many of you come from a technological background, and so some of you might be less, used to being exposed to this complexity. This complexity, by the way, leads to unavoidable problem. This volume of knowledge is so incredibly large and so diverse, and this means that most doctors, as of today, are specialized in a small area of this very complex domain in order to control, the knowledge and be experts. But of course, specialization brings other problems, and we will see that the task of orchestrating the action of many stakeholders for a patient is very, very, very important. Okay, so hopefully this closes the section of my speech on, the doctor's minds and medicine, and let's see where technology fits in the picture. I don't have to, I think, talk about, AI or machine and deep learning, but I want to leave you with an impression. The way I explain these things to doctors, which, by the way, is very important, because if you don't let them understand the real potential of AI, they will probably believe, in things they don't quite understand. It's very important for us to tell them exactly what are the benefits. And one thing, a very simple way of speaking about machine and deep learning is the way they imitate very well things that humans do intuitively. So the famous type 1 reasoning I introduced a few slides back, and this clicks with them very, very well. So in other words, when you explain things to a doctor, I say, listen, AI, with oversimplification, this is an oversimplification, but is a very, very powerful pattern matching, quote unquote, capability, which will help you in these types of tasks. Okay. There are countless useful, of course, applications of this. I'm very fond of rare diseases. I've been working in the pediatric setting for quite a few projects. This is a very fascinating little example. It's actually used by a lot of medical geneticists. It's called deep Gestalt. And this deep Gestalt, very simply, is, takes a picture of a child and doing, the usual convolutional network analysis of the images and so on and so forth, has classified a number of ways, these kids look, associating them to underlying genetic disorders. So this is, we do this naturally. We don't even, when we see, for example, I think most of you have seen a Down syndrome child, because it's quite, when you see one of them and it's a Down child, you don't have, to do analytic reasoning. You just see one and it's a Down child, okay? But of course, medicine, this is, I want to stress, is only a small part of tasks can be done with just, pattern matching, intuitive type of thing. A lot of them need reasoning. This is why I am still leveraging the good old-fashioned AI, the symbolic AI type of things, which are, in my opinion, but not only my opinion, even Samuel Benjo now is, saying, okay, you cannot do everything with machine learning and deep learning. You must also, in many domains, be able to extract knowledge from your data and reason in a symbolic fashion. As a little example, look on the left. This is the count of pages and words in a guideline about a very narrow pathology called immune thrombocytopenia, which is one of the many conditions of the blood. And the guideline for that is 64 pages and 26,000 words. So again, you cannot rely on anybody remembering them perfectly, and you cannot do a lot of reasoning only with pattern matching. So NLP is, in my opinion, an extremely important part of handling medical information, because 70–80% of the information, and we will see an example of that, is actually in written format. And in many information system is handled only as a blob, a field with free text. And it's useful for humans to read that, but it's not useful for machines at all. So it's very important to develop capabilities of identifying named entities in, for example, this is a project I've done on radiology reports, monitoring the risk of death of people with accidents. It's very important to extract knowledge from free text. Okay, I'll skip on that, but I will leave you the slides. This is a very, very important paper that came out last year in September, doing a meta-analysis of AI in breast cancer screening. And the conclusions is that AI is not making the diagnosis much better at all. Okay, this might come as a surprise, but I recommend reading this article very much. So let me give you a little example of this. This is something I've written yesterday. It's very important, the need we have in medicine and other complex domains of transitioning from data to information to knowledge, and actually be able with that knowledge to act to cure people better. This is a very, very, very much simplified example of a patient coming to me lamenting fatigue, lamenting, a burning sensation in their chest and stuff like that. And I stumbled on one piece of data, which you can see here on the left. So I see there is a 12.5. Well, a 12.5 doesn't say anything, of course. I need to know the measurement, so grams per deciliter. I need to know the date, and I need to know that the 12.5 is hemoglobin, the hemoglobin count. So I don't only need the data, I also need some metadata around that to transform that data into information. But this is only one element, because only speaking with history, well, I see the patient and I see it's a male. So for example, when I see this 12.5 of hemoglobin, I start suspecting there might be anemia. And in the green part of this simplified scheme, I have studied, medicine. So I have a classification of anemias in my head, and I start confirming or disconfirming elements of this. So for example, as I see that the patient is a male, I know that 12.5 is pathological, because in females, it's a normal value. So as I know that that patient is not a female, I can, forget about that. Being a male, of course, I can rule out pregnancy, at least most of the times. And also asking, what do you do for a living? I can eliminate it's a post-flight astronaut or it's an athlete. And so on and so forth. I will ask for, or I will look for more data, such as, mean corpuscular volume, the volume of red cells, or the number of reticulocytes, and so on, in order to confirm or disconfirm things that I have in my mind per model. But you understand that all of these things are not data. These are information, and they come not only from the data I can gather from an information system. I must also ask things and get replies, or read through written reports. So again, this is why it's extremely important to being able to map information from structured but also from unstructured material, and language is extremely, extremely important. And this is just a very small fragment of an ontology describing anemias, and this is the little piece of it describing iron deficiency anemias, which is only one type of anemias. So if you don't have these frameworks describing the relationship between entities, so hyperonyms, synonyms, hyponyms, and relationship of classes, you are not going to be able to automate the screening or the recall of important information. And as a last item, I did this morning. Look, this is a on the bottom right is a screenshot of PubMed, and I came out with the number of articles dealing with iron deficiency anemia, which is again only a small part of them, being published from 2021 to today. It's 1,263 papers. So are you sure that you have been able to stay abreast of the production of new knowledge? Are you sure you're giving the right therapy with the new medicine that is more efficient than the old one? Sometimes yes, sometimes less so. So what I think and what I have experimented in the more recent projects is that we have to transition from an idea of only having data lakes to having knowledge graphs. So transitioning from data to knowledge, which is very important. And to do so, you have the added burden of actually using or having to define formal ontologies describing the relationship between the entities in a guideline, in a therapeutic guideline, in a diagnostic guideline, and matching those with the data of the patient. If you can do this, you have an extremely powerful tool for you, for example, to do stuff like patient-based summarization. Patient-based summarization is something extremely important because again, you can drown in data and you're not seeing or having the one that is relevant to you. Remember that the average time, and we will get to that in a last concluding slide, of an encounter between a doctor and a patient is 15 minutes. You cannot have tens and tens of pages of data and having to find. You need something that can guide you to showing you the data and the trends in time of the entities that are relevant to your diagnostic suspect. I have actually done this since a very interesting experiment we have done, monitoring the enterprise service bus of a hospital and capturing, of course, anonymized information about patients and seeing that the things that happened on the ground were quite different than from a theoretical model. And we could reduce the time to diagnosis in a very important way, but only provided that we can track these things in a workflow and in an organized way. This is one of the concluding slides, and just recalling that the introduction of technology must help in focusing the time and the attention of the patient and the doctor between human beings. Most of the information systems we use as of today require more time. So 50% of the time of an encounter is dedicated looking at a screen, interacting with drop-down, boxes and stuff like that. It's stealing time from the very important part that is giving full attention to your patient, and we must work against that. So to conclude, 2 slides, what should we do? Well, we should completely change the user experience of technology in hospitals, outpatient settings and stuff like that. We dream about just a stupid, we need something like Siri or Alexa, or a Google Assistant, probably voice activated, that needs to understand what I am saying, what the patient is saying. This could change things very, very well. We very often talk about big data in medicine. Whoever of you has actually worked on that, not only thought of that, knows that the data itself is extremely dirty, it's extremely incomplete, it's extremely incoherent, and it's usually well closed into vertical silos. The radiology information system, the pathology information system, and so on. We must break these barriers, between application silos. Again, we need to go through a best user experience of patients and doctors. We need to extract updated knowledge from guidelines and scientific literature, and we must use technology to orchestrate the complex, multidisciplinary action of many specialists and nurses and psychologists and the pharmacist and the family doctor. All of these, there would be an incredible benefit if they could work together much better. So I don't know if we have time or if there is a space for questions or not. If not, I thank you all very much for the attention. And if you have any doubts or needs to get in touch, please do so. My mail is there. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. Yes, there are questions here. Can you?
Hello, Roberto.
Hello.
Robert, thank you for this talk. I have many questions, but due to time limitation, I'd like only to ask two questions. One of them is related to your background. I think this is a spin-off of Genoa University. No. So what do you work and what's your relationship with the University of Genoa? This is one thing. The second thing is the title 2030, year 2030. Do you think that all of these things will change, and what by that time will be in a different situation? Thank you.
Very, very interesting questions. Thank you. No, I'm not affiliated to Genoa's University. I have been, as I said at the beginning, I've been working in IBM until last year. Last year, I decided to get out of IBM, and actually now I'm only doing independent research. Okay, I'm looking into helping a few startup companies to better focus their technology ideas on the healthcare sector, but it's something I'm doing on a pro bono basis right now. So hopefully this is for your first question. Why 2030? Because I plan to retire in 2030, and I want to be sure that doctors will be able to work better when I will be old and sick. And this is just a funny way of saying that. But why 2030? Because as of today, there has been an incredible impulse in big data / machine learning types of tasks. And in the past 5, 10 maybe years, but 5 years for sure, we have seen some beautiful little enhancements to what technology helps with in the medical domain, but both in pharma and also in healthcare. It is my strong belief, but not only my strong belief, that you have to come back with also a symbolic approach to actually impact the healthcare field. And it takes a little time. Just let me give you an example. I'm Italian, even though my name is English. So most of the raw material I must work with is, of course, written in Italian, right? And you will find very powerful resources for English language, Spanish, and a few others. But every time I do a project in Italy, many times I have to build those ontologies I was talking about, or thesauri of terms, synonyms, and stuff like that in Italian. And it does take some time to do that. So hopefully by 2030, we will have had both the state and also commercial companies developing these resources, and research, of course, institutions developing these researchers. So developing symbolic applications will be a lot easier. I hopefully addressed your questions.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay. Is there any question?
I have a question, please. Okay, Iman Haider from Beirut Arab University.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you for this amazing slides and presentation. It holds a lot of important ideas. I would like to emphasize on extracting reasoning and knowledge from data. You have shown a slide about some tool you use, or I don't know if you use it or from the internet. If you could go back to that slide before the NLP slides.
This one,
please.
maybe?
Before that. Yes,
Mm.
this one.
Okay.
After the down kid. After the down kid.
This one maybe?
No, after the down kid.
Sorry, I'm not understanding.
The image, the slide of the down kid.
Oh, okay, okay. Sorry, yes.
This
After
one.
it.
Yeah, yes. Okay, here we are. And actually, this is not a down kid. That's why I couldn't
Okay.
understand. Yeah.
The one after this, please.
Okay.
The one after this.
Yes.
Not
this one.
Again.
yes, this one. This one.
Okay,
Thank
this
you.
one. Okay.
Do you have this tool or?
Okay. Okay. NLP is my big passion. Okay. What you are seeing right now is the task of annotating a text with named entities. So this example was about radiological cerebral scans. Okay. So the first thing you have to do is to come up with a type system, and you see this here: anatomy, collocation. So anatomy is when a doctor speaks about an organ, okay? So left ventriculi, collocation, over it, under it, behind, blah, blah, blah. Diagnosis, cancer, glioblastoma of the brain. Negation. This is extremely important because in radiological reports, you will see no signs of hemorrhage. So if you go only with a keyword, you will have a lot of false positives. You must understand that there is no signs of, okay, quantity and so on. Once you do the entity model, you have to get young doctors and you give them, you know, each of them, you give 100 reports. Please, you go here and you will have to tell me what are the negations. So the green ones are the negations, the blue ones are anatomy, the red ones are observations, and so on. This part is to build an annotated corpus to train your NLP models on. This tool was a tool that was used by IBM. I was working for IBM at the time. It's called IBM Watson Knowledge Studio. It's a very nice product and can be used for free if you have an IBM Cloud account, which is also free if you don't go into production. And you could use this very well. But also, as some of you are still in research, there is a product called Doccano, D-O-C-C-A-N-O, which is an open source equivalent to this. It's very easy to install. You can have it on Docker containers and have it up and running in a few minutes. And again, Doccano will help you ingesting the texts and giving the people you want to train the system with to do this annotation. And you will then use that annotated corpus to actually train your model. And then you will go through the usual phases of, you know, testing it and measuring F1 or whatever precision measure you want to do, and perhaps do refinements to the model and stuff like that. So there are many of them, and many of them are open source. And if I may give a suggestion, Hugging Face and other big open source projects on NLP, for me in this moment, are the way to go, because if you do this with powerful but proprietary systems, you are liable to being influenced by the commercial strategies of, you know, these large companies. So one day IBM might decide that this thing closes or this thing is a lot more expensive. So if I can humbly suggest, I personally would, as of today, use open source stuff to do this. And if you go on Google, you find a lot of those. Doccano is really nice to use.
Okay, it's the time is over for your presentation. If people has an additional question, please write, call Robert, that is very friendly and a very he's give a very important answers. Okay, thank you, Alexander.